Muslim Community Radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, the weekly show where we break down the headlines and bring you the insights that matter most. I'm your host, Akil Khalil, and alongside me is my co-host, Ishfaq. Great to have you here, Ishfaq. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, brother, and Happy New Year to all our listeners.
It's good to see you again. I felt like last year just flew by.
You know what? Where's it gone? Honestly, 12 months. As I'm getting older, it seems like the years are becoming months because, I don't know what happened last year.
It's interesting, actually, isn't it? You know, when you speak to people who are older than you, I certainly remember this when I was a little bit younger and I was speaking to elders in the community or wherever I might meet them, and you know, they might have a really long life. So they could have been in their 80s or in their 90s, and I'd ask them actually. I'd say, how was your life? You know, what was the pace of life like? You know, what's it like being at this age? And almost universally, they'd say, it's gone by in a flash.
Well, just look at our own lives. Going back to when we were growing up, our generation, it looked like the day never ended.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Growing up, going out on the bike, going, playing, doing whatever you're doing with your mates, you know, not having as many TV channels as you have now.
There was 4.
Right? But the day never ended.
Yeah.
Okay? And by the end of the night, you were exhausted and you'd go to bed after having a shower or whatever. Now it's like the day started and you think, hold on a minute, we've not done anything yet and the day's already ended. So time's flying.
It is indeed. And just to add to that, as I will say, I have found myself saying this quite frequently, there's not enough hours in the day anymore.
There isn't.
Honestly, I feel like if there were 28, 29 hours, I'd still fill those looking for the 30th.
I think we should do something like, maybe that's something to propose, change the clock. Give us 30 hours in a day because 24 ain't long enough.
That's true. I'm sure we'd have some sort of pushback on it. Nevertheless, so today we're tackling 3 key topics. First, can we be optimistic about the year ahead? Despite a challenging global landscape, there are reasons to believe better times may be ahead. Next, we'll dive into how the UK compares to our European neighbours in areas like the economy, healthcare and energy. Finally, we'll zoom into the Cambridgeshire Mayor election, what's at stake, who's the front runner or who the front runners are, and what it means for the region's future. We'd love for you to get involved. You can call us on 01733 602 133, or you can text the show on 07411 191 062, or as ever, comment on the live streams, Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. We'd love to hear from you. So let's dive right in, Ishfaq. It's no secret that the last few years have been tough. Pandemics, geopolitical tensions, and a cost of living crisis have weighed heavily on all of us. But let's shift perspective for a moment. Can we be hopeful about what's ahead? Globally, there's been progress in areas like renewable energy. Did you know that over 90% of new electricity capacity added last year came from renewables? It's a sign that the world is finally turning a corner on fossil fuels. And while climate challenges remain daunting, technological breakthroughs in battery storage and green hydrogen offer glimpses of a sustainable future. Economically, the International Monetary Fund predicts global GDP growth will rebound modestly this year to around 3%. That's still below historic averages, but you know, it's a sign of resilience, isn't it? Inflation is stabilising in many advanced economies, including in the UK. Although that being said, Labour are under intense pressure at the moment, especially what I've just been reading today as well. But given all of that, given what's happened in the last few years, and it being the beginning of the new year, can we be hopeful?
You know what? If you asked me a couple of years ago when we were sat here, I'd say yes, and I'd be very optimistic. And you know, I don't want to put things down and be the negative egg in the room. But am I hopeful at the moment? To be honest with you, Akil, I'm not. You know, the future. You know, what was that saying on the future's orange? At the moment, I would say the future's very bleak. Unfortunately, look, I want to be optimistic. I want to be sounding promising to people and say, yeah, things are looking great. But so far at the moment, I'm kind of holding back. I think the only thing we can do is improve our own circles, improve ourselves, try and do the best we can, you know, in our little world. But on a global scale, on a national scale, are things looking good or promising at the moment? No, for me, they're not. And we'll touch on this later on the second part of our show, you know, when we're talking about our neighbours and stuff, European neighbours. But I can't see where we're going. I can't see the positives coming our way at the moment, and that's unfortunate. With the Trump coming in.
I think it's, what is it, 21st of January, I think is his inauguration?
Yeah, so with that happening, at one time I was optimistic, thinking, hold on, at least it'll hopefully put an end to the Ukrainian war, it'll put an end to the Palestinian genocide and what's going on there. But if that was going to happen, it would have already, gone that way, and at the moment I'm not seeing that.
If anything, actually, just to interject there, if anything, what we're seeing is both Israel and Russia are continuing, in fact, amplifying what they're doing, whilst they wait for Trump to come into power. And there's a school of thought out there, which is that both sides are trying to achieve maximum objectives for whatever they may be before he comes into power. So then there's a settlement that gets negotiated.
But even that will take time, So again, like I said, that's not promising. With the energy crisis, regardless of what's happening, what you mentioned about, more green energy, etc. The issues we're facing at the moment is, look, people within this country are still having to go without heat. This weekend's going to be one of, there's already a weather warning out. And I'm fearful and I'm worrying about our elderly, our pensioners, those people that can't afford to heat their homes. So look, to our listeners, I would say, if you do have people that live close by, just check on them. Just knock on the door. Just make sure that they're warm, they've got heat, and if they haven't, either offer them to come to your house or whatever. But this next few days is going to be, it's bleak out there. So let's do our little bit. Like I said, let's do what we can within our own little globe, within our own little world, within our own little communities, with our neighbours. So look, as Muslims, it's incumbent on us to make sure, firstly, that our neighbours, whatever colour, creed, religion they are, that they are safe and that they are secure. So I would request our listeners, especially this weekend, to go out and just check on your neighbours.
No, that's great, and it's really, really important, isn't it? It strengthens your connection with your neighbours, as well as ensuring that you might be living in a very warm, safe, secure environment. But often, as when you're helping people in the community, you'll find that neighbours who haven't spoken to them for years, they don't actually realise the poverty that's next door. So, no, great advice there. On a societal level, there's increasing civic engagement, from climate protests to grassroots political movements. More people are demanding accountability from the leaders. This kind of activism has potential to shape politics for the better. That's something that I've taken from last year, which is that we've seen more and more, okay, look, we will not agree with the form of protest. Of course, you've got Just Stop Oil as an example. I understand the perspective and what they're trying to achieve. I don't always agree with the way they go about doing it.
Look, me as a scientist, I can tell you that we don't just need crude oil or oil for fuel or heating. We need it for medicines, for plastic, for what some of the stuff you're wearing.
What are you trying to say? Big shout out to FCP.
Medicine, there's so much stuff that it's used for. So just to say stop all their tactics, I can't sit here and say I agree with. People gluing themselves to a road.
Yeah, but I did say to you the tactics are not agreeable. I mean, look, there needs to be a serious conversation about the climate, COP26, etc., 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 etc. It's just an echo chamber, or it's just, they never provide enough funding, and it's the richer nations who are still doing more than the nations that are going to be impacted by it most. Look, my opinion about that is based on what's happened over the last 3 years and where we are today. It feels like the world or communities are more engaged in a civic way, whether we agree with them or not.
Let's put it this way, our youngsters are more informed. They're more caring about the environment. That's something I've noticed. They're more knowledgeable about what's going on. They're more concerned about their futures, which is a good thing. There's more education out there about environmental impacts and the issues we face. The fallout of environmental impacts or climate change is being seen more and more over the last few years, with flooding in places where you wouldn't expect it. We've discussed this before with, the way the weather is nowadays, the differences in climate. So we are already seeing the impacts, and people are kind of showing a concern and raising more awareness. So definitely more needs to be done there. But again, we start with that thing. I'd love to be optimistic and say that, we're going to do this and that the world will come together and fix the climate issue.
Not with Trump coming back in power?
At the moment, I see a lot of politicians talking, and there's a lot of political talk. But unfortunately, there's a lot of rowing back as well when it comes to issues of climate change and the issues that we face, not just in the UK, but globally.
I agree with you. In terms of being hopeful for this year, I'm very hopeful that we see these two major conflicts in the world come to an end. And I certainly couldn't give you an answer today. I think a lot of that conversation will be post-Trump now because of the power that he yields and the promises that he made leading up to the election and then him securing the victory. Specifically around Ukraine and then Gaza. I think it's ominous. The signs are certainly ominous. But we'll see. I'm definitely hopeful about that.
Just kind of touching on that, again, I'll tell you the concerns, and we kind of discussed this pre-show as well, and it is definitely another show we need to have on the whole subject, which is Elon Musk and his input on the Trump campaign and his potential impact on future British elections. And the sway that he's having, which again for me is, it doesn't give you optimism. I think what he's doing is very negative, but again, that's totally another
no, it is, but and I'm glad you brought it, because it's a lot of this is happening over the last 48 hours, and the last 24 hours have been extremely difficult. If you're a Muslim, and some of the things that he has posted on his social media platform, they're very difficult to read. Continuously attaching Muslims to heinous crimes, and then those same Islamophobic tropes that have been shared online, it's very tough to read. But I think it's a reality we're going to be seeing post-Trump. But you're right, we will pick this up in a separate show. We will dissect this, and how can you be, is it right to be the richest man in the world and have such a significant influence in the White House as well, and you
potentially number 10,
and you are also peddling misinformation. So we will come to that.
That is a show, but I'll tell you something. Sorry, Akil, I just want to touch on as well. We were talking about the Palestine issue and how we're hoping that Trump coming in resolves that issue.
Yeah.
Something, I almost feel like over the last 6 months, people have almost become ignorant towards Palestine and what's going on there, or chose to, sort of show that they're helpless. Nothing can be done, nothing can be changed. It is what it is. Leave it to the will of Allah. As in, those people are dying, being slaughtered. What can we do to change it?
Do you think it's because we've been so desensitized to it?
I think that's the way it's going.
There's been so much killing. There's nothing good that comes out in terms of a news story. Every hospital's almost flattened. Thousands have been killed. And journalists have been killed, arrested, deported. Journalistic expression and freedom of expression and channels and networks have been blocked from reporting. Neighbouring countries have just been here and there trying to do mediation. It's that whole cycle of war, isn't it? You've got Ukraine and you've got Gaza, and you see these images. There's this negative images day after day after day. So you get desensitized to a situation like that. Do you think that's what it is? We have got war fatigue.
I don't know if it's war fatigue. Look, it's always an issue within our hearts that we feel, and I can't look at those images anymore. I'll be honest with you, and there's many people that can't. And I do personally.
That's kind of my point.
Helpless.
Yeah.
Right. Towards being able to make a difference. And the thing is, the worst of the worst has already been done. Before, someone would bomb a country would bomb a school, and there'd be an outcry.
Yeah.
Someone would bomb a hospital, there'd be an outcry. But all of that's been done again and again and again, to the point where people are like, it's almost like, and what? What more can they do? They've done everything they can, yet nothing has changed. And that is the sad fact. And that's why this year I'm not very optimistic. You know?
We will come back to this, of course we will. And of course we pray there is a peaceful resolution to this, an immediate ceasefire to the situation in Gaza. Okay, let's shift focus. UK versus Europe, how do we compare? Let's shift focus to something closer to home, Ishfaq. How does the UK stack up against our European neighbours? It's been nearly 3 years since Brexit officially took effect, and the impacts are clearer than ever. Economically, the UK's inflation rate peaked at 11% last year, much higher than EU average of around 6%. That was driven partly by our reliance on imported goods and energy. In contrast, Germany doubled down on renewables and minimised reliance on external energy sources. The foresight paid dividends during the energy crisis. On healthcare, the NHS remains a cornerstone of British society, but it's under immense strain. Waiting times for surgeries and GP appointments are at record highs. Meanwhile, countries like Denmark and the Netherlands are leaning towards digital health solutions and decentralised care to ease their own pressures. What's your thoughts on this?
I can tell you, in the real world, I've lived in a bubble for so long, thinking that we've been brought up thinking, and I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to be a Peterborean, right? I shouldn't have to repeat that or say that, but the fact is I am. But I've always lived in this bubble that this is the best city and the best country and the best place in the world to live. Mm-hmm. And in my own biased little view, I might still think that. But in reality, I was fortunate enough to travel through Europe over the Christmas break. And I'll give you a little story. And you know what? I kind of had a reality check, right? And the reality check is, and I was comparing everything to Peterborough, okay? Whether that was because I've been in the council, but everything was compared to Peterborough for me. And I was like, so we've struggled this year to get Christmas decorations. Okay, we've struggled to get a clean city. Every time I see something, so Lincoln Road, a friend of mine posted something, it was atrocious. What was the amount of rubbish because of the wind and bins not being emptied? I looked at the state of roads and, footpaths in this country or in our city, and they're not the best. Like you mentioned, healthcare, people stuck in corridors on beds waiting for 3 days for treatment, or chairs, right? But as I drove through the city, so I went to a city called Troyes in France. Never heard of it before, just happened to stop there, stay there the night. I looked out the window in the morning and they had a small electric bus going past. They had Christmas decorations, a Christmas market. I mean, when I say Christmas decorations, on every corner. Not that it's important to me, but what I'm saying is this city was organised. They had a nice food market. I visited there just across the road from where I was staying. There was a really nice indoor market like what we used to have, but I would say indoor fruit market, fresh fruits and meats and everything, fish. And I was like, these guys have got it right. The streets were clean. There wasn't a bit of rubbish anywhere. It looked busy. Yep. There was shops everywhere, various styles, different brands. So as a city, and I came back and I thought to myself, I feel like dragging the Peterborough City Council officers, councillors to say, let's go visit that city. I want you to go and have a look at this city that we've never heard of, and compare it to Peterborough. They've got better transport. They've got better road conditions. They've got the market. They've got decorations, they've got infrastructure, they've got culture, they've got everything there. They've got migrants, they've got immigrants, they've got everything else that we say and people try and put negative attachment to. But the thing is, it all worked. Okay, so where are we going wrong, or where have we gone wrong, and what do we need to do differently? So maybe we need to look at our European neighbours to take some lessons, and get out of our little bubble like we are the best. And, which is, honestly, until this Christmas holiday, I believed, UK is the best place in the world. Peterborough is the best city in the world. And my bubble kind of burst, right? So now I would say that it's a reality check and we've got a long way to go. As a city, as even with the council, etc., I would ask them, I would implore them to go and have a look at these cities in our, from our European neighbours and see how they're doing stuff and what they're doing differently and what they're getting right. Stuff like bins. I said it to the council years ago. Why don't we get these, the underground bins where you just pop it in, a truck comes along, empties it all out, rather than bins on the road waiting to be emptied and then rubbish going everywhere. They've planned it right. They've got these in Europe already, right? So take the pain now, but do the stuff right for the long term, for the future, including our energy issues, which I think, Peter, in a way, we're kind of ahead with our recycling centre and, our power station, but we've still got a long way to go. There's so much we can do better.
Okay, thanks for that. In terms of, social cohesion is another area I think we should examine. Many European countries, especially in Scandinavia, are showing stronger metrics in terms of happiness and trust in their government. I'm smiling because trust in the government, Post-Brexit Britain, however, is grappling with political division and questions about its identity. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it, Ishfaq? The UK is still seen as a leader in innovation, particularly in fintech and life sciences. Ishfaq, do you think strengths are enough to offset some of our challenges?
Our strengths. I think the image that we portray and the respect we have around the world, if we're not careful, will diminish as a country, as a nation. I think, like I said, our bubble will burst if we're not being realistic about what we need to do and where we are. Yes, we're doing good stuff. This nation was innovative. We were ahead of the game when it came to industry, manufacturing. All of that's gone by the by now. Yeah. So what are we actually offering? And we do have an identity crisis in this country. I believe we do. You ask someone, what is it to be British? Right? You'll get people making comments on social media about, and sometimes it's unfortunately the racist people that want to make a comment about, how British they are and how I'm not as British as they am. But then when you ask them what makes you British, they can't answer you. Because there's an identity crisis. People don't know what makes you British. And it's not all good just saying, yeah, we salute the Union Jack or support the royal family or whatever. But what makes you British? There is an identity crisis in this country. Even within our youngsters, within the communities, to be honest with you, they've got an identity crisis, yeah? So we've got a long way to go.
It's across the board, isn't it? I think you're right. I think there's definitely an identity crisis. People, you are also right as well. People will claim that they know what it is. They claim they're trying to defend some type of values. But when you break it down with them, it's not really anything that I've thought to myself, okay, you've got a point. But
I saw something today. Let me give you an example. And I shouldn't always take stuff personally, but I do. Okay,
he's just said that on air.
Yeah, I do take things personally, unfortunately, and it always, I see people make stupid comments on social media, and it bothers me. I was looking at a post from our local Evening Telegraph on social media today about criminals that are being locked up, and there was a whole list of people who were, for wrongful acts with, many different things. And if they were of an ethnic background, there would have been loads of derogatory, racist comments on there. But guess what? These were white guys that were, messing about, doing the wrong thing, paedophiles, whatever you want to say. And the comments weren't as bad as what they would be if they were of a different colour or creed. So there's always that divide, and it bothers me. Look, they're all the same. They're all wrong. They're all wrong uns, right? Treat them all the same way. But that is an issue in this country as well. We always want to blame the other, and unfortunately, sometimes our governments have made it easier for people to try and find a scapegoat or to blame someone. And that's something we need to change. And hopefully people, engage with this show, can listen to us. And if they have any questions or concerns, talk to us. And let's be open and honest. And that's what we're here to do, right?
Absolutely. No, I do agree with you. What's your thoughts? Do let us know. How do you feel about the UK's current position in Europe? Are we on the right track, or is there more work to be done? Let us know. You can call us on 01733 602 133, or you can text the show 07411 191062. I should know these numbers off by heart, Ishfaq. I basically live here. And you can comment on the live stream, Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. But I always look. Do you know why? Because just in case I get a digit mixed up, and I know for a fact I'll get a text straight away. You did that properly. Look, we're heading towards an ad break. I think you've raised some really interesting points. Some that we will cover individually in shows in the weeks and months ahead. I am hopeful. Call it the eternal optimistic person that I am. I'm hopeful that we will see some key changes and things that are going to benefit the country and across our borders as well. But I'm also realistic. I'm looking at the people and the governments that are in charge and the conversations they're already having. And, it's going to be a challenging year. I'm saying this already, where we've not even done the first week of January. But I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful that people who are in power do the right things and support local communities, national, the country, and people who need our help around the world. But I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, get in touch with the show. We're heading towards a break now, but we'll catch you shortly after this ad break.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
2020 World Buffet is inspired by the best foods from around the world. See our teppanyaki chefs grill your food to order, or choose delicious Indian, Italian, Chinese, Mexican dishes and British favourites, all halal. 2020 World Buffet offers you unlimited food at a set price. Open 7 days for lunch and dinner. Catering, wedding and party services available too. Call 01733 566 320 or visit 2020buffet.co.uk. 2020 World Buffet, 35 New Road, Peterborough, PE1 1FJ.
City & Co Tax Specialists. A modern, refreshing and straightforward solution to your accounting and tax needs. We are flexible, clear and dynamic. Are you tired of your current accountant not giving you the right advice, not giving you time, not giving you business solutions? City & Co Tax Specialists have helped many businesses build a better structure to minimize commercial risks and become more tax efficient. There is no substitute for a well-rounded specialist accountant and tax advisor. Our consultants will work with you to minimize your tax exposure through tax planning. Whether you are looking within the UK or offshore tax planning, we can help. We offer so much more than your average accountant, and that's what stands us apart. Call us on 01733 777782. Your partners in success.
At Cake Inn, all our cakes and slices are freshly baked for that delicious taste. At Cake Inn, we bake 100% vegetarian and halal eggless fresh cream cakes. Delicious flavoured cakes for birthdays and weddings, ceremonies and all other occasions, with free customised messages, even balloons and candles too. Order for delivery or collection from Cake Inn, 489 Lincoln Road, PE1 2PE, and your cake could be ready within 2 hours. Find out more and order online at cakein.co.uk or call 01733 496 584.
So, what's your New Year's resolution then?
To give up smoking once and for all.
Ah, that was mine last year. Never thought I'd do it, but here we are. I'm smoke-free. Saved enough money to take the family on holiday, and I don't get out of breath as much.
So, what's the secret? How did you manage it?
No secret. I had 12 weeks free one-to-one support with Healthy You's Stop Smoking service. The council funds it, and they gave me prescription nicotine replacement therapy to help with the cravings.
You're 5 times more likely to quit smoking with Healthy You's support. So look them up. Make 2025 the year you quit smoking. Visit healthyu.org.uk or call 0333 005 009.
Need a taxi that won't break the bank? Amar Cabs offers safe local rides at affordable prices, starting at £3.99. Get to Heathrow for £120 and London Stansted or London Luton for just £88. Private school and executive business class drop-offs are also available. Booking is easy. Go to www.amarcabs.com and download our app on Android or iOS or call 01733 555 888. Wherever you're headed, Amar Cabs is just a tap away with reliable, affordable rides starting at just £3.99.
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. If you've just joined us, we've been discussing reasons for optimism in 2025 and how the UK measures up against Europe. Now let's bring it closer to home with a look at the Cambridgeshire Mayor election. Now, just to share with you, Ishfaq is a former Conservative councillor, so he has good understanding of how this system works. And I'm going to be learning from you tonight, I have no doubt, Ishfaq. With that in mind, the mayor elections is shaping up to be one of the most consequential in years, I believe, from some of the research I've done. Cambridgeshire is a vital region, not just for its history, but for its future as a hub of innovation and growth. So let's start with the candidates. We have Paul Bristow and
Nick Johnson.
Excellent. Running on a platform of sustainable growth, emphasising affordable housing, better public transport and green energy. The critics, however, argue that their proposals lack concrete funding plans. When I was doing my research, I did see, both candidates were pushing out information and so on, and there was some real concern from residents across Cambridgeshire in some of the posts that I was reading about funding. But before we get to that, Ishfaq, could you explain to us the importance of this election and how it works and what kind of power that this mayor would have?
Or has. Okay, yeah. So to give an example, we have a Peterborough City Mayor who is elected by the councillors as a chairman for the council meetings. So that isn't to say that he's elected by the public. He's elected as a councillor, but that's Councillor Marco Seresti. But that's more of a sort of local role. The county mayors are what you would say like Sadiq Khan in London. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of control, a lot of power when it comes to stuff like public transport, connections, our highways, planning houses, future planning, development. They have a lot of say in our infrastructure for Cambridgeshire. So the combined Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Authority. So it's a big area, and it comes with a lot of responsibility. They also then touch on health within the county. So they'll sit on public health meetings. They'll sit on planning. There's loads of hats they have to wear as a mayor. But there's been some really successful mayors in recent years. In Teesside, the mayor there has been very successful in bringing forward, affordable housing, good infrastructure, done a brilliant job. So, other cities have not just cities, but counties have had good, successful mayors. Unfortunately, for me, I feel like the one that we've had recently, Mayor Nick Johnson, I think hasn't been as good or successful. He is a full-time medical practitioner, so that takes up probably a lot of his time. But the mayor's role should be a full-time role because of the amount of authority it carries and the weight it carries. So we've kind of been sold a bit short, I believe, but that's my opinion, and others will probably say otherwise.
Okay. In just so I understand this a little bit more as well. So is this particular role in Cambridgeshire, will they be responsible for any budgets?
Yes, so the mayors do call for funding. They have to, obviously they have a team of people who work with them to apply for funding. They have to meet certain requirements to be able to do that, or prove certain requirements, and that's the mayor's team's job to prove to government. So they have to meet those specifications to get funding, which unfortunately our current mayor has failed, or some of the funding has been lost because it wasn't applied for in time, or for whatever reasons it wasn't done in the right way. So we've had part of your council tax will be a mayor's precept. So this last year I think we had £5 added onto our council tax across Peterborough as part of the Mayor's Precept, and I think that was probably county-wide as well. And recently I know that he's looking to increase that again. And most of that is to make up for the shortfalls in funding that we haven't received or been able to get, which is unfortunate. But the taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for mistakes made by administration.
No, I understand that. I mean, obviously he's not here to defend himself. So, but what we will certainly do is invite Paul and Nick onto one of our shows leading up to the election, which is in May.
May, I think it's May the 1st.
May the 1st, okay, and we can have explore this with them.
The important thing is this year we don't have any council elections, we don't have any parliamentary elections. The only elections we will have this year are the county mayor election for the combined authority, which, at the moment we've got Conservative candidate, which is Paul Bristow, and the Labour candidate or incumbent mayor, which is Nick Johnson, Dr. Nick Johnson.
Okay, and I know turnout has been a long-standing issue in mayoral elections. Last time, less than 40% of eligible voters participated. That's troubling for a region where decisions about housing, transport and public services have such a direct impact on daily life. In fact, what do you think could motivate people to the polls this time?
Well, at the end of the day, people within Peterborough know of Paul Bristow, and they may not know of Dr. Nick Johnson because obviously he's more Cambridgeshire based.
Cambridge based.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. But the fact is that the issues that the mayor needs to tackle is issues that we in Peterborough face when it comes to public transport. Villages that don't have buses or regular buses, so they will want to take part in this election. People who are still on the housing register and want cheap, affordable housing will want to be taking part in this election. Our pensioners who are worried about their, heating bills or not being able to warm their homes or getting the grant, not that the mayor can get them the grant, but the mayor can put in provisions to support those pensioners. So they will want to take part in this election. So I think with the way the policies of the government have been going over the last 6 months, I think there's quite a few people that will want to take an active role because this is probably their chance to show how they feel about what's been going on since the general election.
So you think this is look, I've actually spoken to a number of people as well who've kind of echoed what you just said there at the end, which is they feel that this will be an opportunity for people at the ballot box to rebuke some of the changes that have been forced upon them through the current government, central government. So look, certainly these are conversations that are happening on the doorstep, but equally there are a lot of people there who are saying the Tories were in power for so long, it is going to take drastic steps. It's going to have to be an atmosphere or a lifestyle or a locality where difficult decisions have been made. And in order for us to turn the corner as a county or a country, we are going to have to bear the brunt of some of the issues that weren't dealt with when the Conservatives were in power. I love the way you're looking at me.
No. So look, the easiest way I could say this to you is the incumbent mayor has, made some errors. People can look into it themselves. I'm not going to list it myself. I can do. But there's been some grave errors, I believe, which have meant that we've missed out on funding, which have meant that we've not got delivery of stuff that we should have had. We've missed out on housing, on stuff that was promised to us over a very long period of time. And this election will give people the opportunity to voice those concerns with a powerful voice. And I believe, the mayor does have, whether that's Nick Johnson or Paul Bristow, the mayor's voice is as powerful voice as you can probably get within the county. And for someone who should be on side with those people. So they can make a big difference. It's not just the government, and especially with more power being given, from what Labour are saying, more power being given to regions a bit more devolution. So the mayors of these counties will have more power, and it will be obviously, sent down from government in the sense of they will be more in charge of what is happening within county level. So rather than it waiting for Keir Starmer or whoever the Prime Minister is or the MPs to speak about stuff in Parliament, this will be the closest you can get to having action taken on a local level, having someone speak, raise those issues, what you want to talk about, but at the same time, act and deliver services that you need. That's the main and the key thing. The mayor should be able to deliver on a local level the services that you need to improve your lives, which is, whether it's better transport links, whether it's better roads, an impact on our health, system, what needs we have on a local level. The mayor does have a lot of impact locally, and that's why I would say this is probably, for me, it's more important than the general election, believe it or not.
Yeah, purely based on the fact of how many people can benefit from this locally.
For us, regardless of who we put in number 10, for a county, this is the most important election we will have for the next 5 years. So I think the more people that can get involved and take part in this election and understand who they want to vote for and why, and maybe not just party colours or banners, but more so for the person, or more so for who's going to have your best interests at heart. I think people need to definitely look at this, and we need to have a good turnout.
Okay. In terms of where you mentioned, I did also read about it as well, about Labour's proposals for these super majority councils. These, what's your feelings about this? What's your thoughts about this?
I haven't looked too much into it.
Do you think this is going to give too much power? Is it too much devolution? I know that some of the mayors like Andy Burnham and so on have all wanted to have even more control, have even more devolution, for counties to be responsible for larger budgets, for more of the infrastructure, so that, like you just mentioned there, they can fight for their residents, they can fight for their constituents, they can fight to have more housing. Look, the one thing that you see up and down this country, no matter where you go, is house building. It is everywhere, but it's still not enough.
It's not just house. You've got to build houses in the right way, in the right manner, in the right place. I'm for development, but it's got to be in the right place, and in the right style. And location is important. So you can't just put up loads of houses in the wrong place just because you need houses. You need infrastructure to go with that.
I agree with you. Let me just come back to you in a second. But we're in a situation where, the last 14 years, there's a diabolical amount of houses that were new housing stock that came to the market. So you don't think that we're in a situation where we're desperate, where I take your point, where it should be strategic and there should be infrastructure in place and so on. But we're really, really behind on this.
We are behind. There's no two ways about it. We're behind on.
I'm not even trying to pin this on a party. I'm just talking as a British person, as a resident of this country. What we see is just so many. This is one of the reasons why the house prices are so high. It's supply and demand.
It is. Look, as a parent of kids who are now growing up, getting to that age where they need to start looking at buying a house and moving out, and many other parents will be in the same boat as me, where their kids are kind of feeling that brunt too. It's not easy for kids to go out and buy a house nowadays. It's very difficult. So yes, of course we need more affordable housing. 100% we do, but it needs to be built in the right way with the right infrastructure.
Go on, give me an idea. What's your ideal location infrastructure? Talk me through it.
Well, the ideal thing is that for a certain number of houses that they build, they should always ensure that there's a doctor's surgery, a school, that can service that area, the shops that can service that area. We had a nightmare in Peterborough in Manor Drive, where for many years, that's been there for 5 years now, Manor Drive, still being developed. They've got a school there now over the last couple of years, last year, but they didn't have shops, they didn't have local amenities. You can't have that. That's not building a community. If you want to build communities, you've got to build the infrastructure and plan that in with it. It's got to be a given, you know. But then at the same time, Section 105 is where, you know, those builders and developers are then using that money, giving it to councils to spend within communities to improve local infrastructure, to improve, you know, parks and social areas for our elderly, community hubs. There's so much that can be done, but it all needs to go hand in hand. And if we just make it a superhighway of building loads of houses but nothing else with it, it's not going to be a fun place to live.
No, I take your point. Do you think that one of the reasons a situation like Manor Drive occurs is purely based on the fact that there's such a need for housing, and we're kind of chasing our tails, or is it just literally bad development?
I think that's more to do. I'm not saying. Look, I'm not saying Manor Drive is bad development.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the planning has to go hand in hand with it, and sometimes, you know, it's probably down to the councils and the government to ensure that that infrastructure is put in place before.
Why is it not a prerequisite then?
I don't know, but hopefully, you know, that's something that is looked at and changed. You know, for whatever number of houses, because look, at the end of the day, builders want to build as many houses as they can on the smallest amount of area that they can, and cram as many houses in as they can, because it maximising profit. It's a business model for them. But at the same time, for communities, you know, we look at Hampton and how tight the roads are there, right? They've got
an understatement.
You know, they've got houses there, fine, but parking there,
it's a nightmare.
and as the population's increased and as people have had the number of cars within their households increase, parking's become a nightmare there. Driving through there has become a nightmare. So all of this stuff has to be planned in the long term. You know, let's look at the bigger picture. And that's why I always, look, coming back to what I said about visiting France, they've got big roads, you know, the infrastructure's there. So maybe we need to, again, look at our neighbours and say, how are they doing stuff? If someone's doing something right, let's learn from it, you know, rather than making the same mistakes again.
Yeah, I take your point. I've just got a text coming from Kim. Kim's asking you issues specifically. Who is the mayor accountable to?
Well, he's an elected mayor, so he's accountable to the public, to the people that have elected him.
Outside of that, I'm assuming.
Outside of that, I'm not sure.
The council? Or no? Okay, so this is okay. I hope that's answered your question, Kim. Thanks for texting the show.
It probably hasn't. It's probably the worst answer you could get, Kim. I'm really sorry. Well, I would, you know, I always say that elected representatives are accountable to the people that have elected them. But beyond that, I'm sure that there is some oversight. I'm sure there is committees that look at, you know, their dealings and stuff like that. But, you know, I don't want to delve too much into our current mayor and the issues he's faced, because then I'll be biased and I'll be told off for being one-sided, and I don't want to do that on a radio show.
But I've also said to you, we will invite him.
Yeah, I think that's the fairest way to do it, because then he can at least defend himself.
Absolutely.
And respond to people's questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just so I know, why is there no Liberal or Reform or, you know, Green Party candidate in this?
There may be. They've not put anyone forward yet, but
Okay.
not to say that there won't be. But in this region, it's generally always been Conservative or Labour, you know, mayors. So I don't know.
Why are you not gone for it?
Because Paul Bristow's a friend, and he is the most capable person I know for that job, and the best man suited for that job in my eyes. So yeah, I would never go for it if someone like that's available and able to do it.
Some might say Nick is.
Well, yeah, of course they will.
I suppose the matter to be seen. Just so you're aware, Ishrat, if you were running for it, I would grill you every week on this show.
You would what? Sorry,
I would grill you every week.
I'm sure you would. No, I think we've got the best man for the job in my mind up as a candidate.
So tell me something. In terms of okay, we've spoken about the mayor for Cambridgeshire. This role that we have for a mayor in Peterborough, is that a largely ceremonial role?
It is. Yeah.
So there's no you don't obviously have major responsibilities other than
chairing
networking.
the council, meetings.
Okay, that's a serious responsibility. Yeah.
Well, it is, and it's got to be. He's got to be like, he's a conservative, but he's got, as a mayor, you've got to be non-political. So you've got to be fair to all sides, which I think our current mayor's doing a fantastic job looking at. I've been watching some of the meetings, and he does a good job. And obviously, his ceremonial role is also services like opening shops and schools or visiting.
How does one get that role then?
So in Peterborough, it's the longest serving councillor. So whoever is the next longest serving councillor would be the next mayor. And that's how we've done it in Peterborough for years.
And of course, if you don't want to do it, just passes on to the next long serving.
Yeah.
Okay. I've actually met the current mayor at an event as well. Lovely chap. And lots of wisdom. We're hoping to get him onto one of our shows soon.
I'm sure he'll be more than happy to come. Councillor Marcus Arresti is a very nice guy, and no, definitely, I'm sure he's a character as well. So definitely.
Would you say? I mean, obviously, I know you're no longer a councillor, but is that and I'm not. So I want you to just put your friend to one side.
Yeah.
Has it ever attracted you as a role?
What?
The mayor role.
Which mayor? Sorry.
The Cambridgeshire Mayor role.
No.
The ceremonial one.
No.
Neither.
No.
Would you rather be a councillor?
Even when I was a councillor, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to be a councillor. I just wanted to do it to make a difference.
No, I appreciate that.
So,
this role doesn't attract you.
I've never been one for titles. I've never been one for roles or.
Although you do have a title.
As a councillor, I did.
No, you also have another one, which is Tufan. I'm just putting that out there now. I did say to you that I would say this on there. I've said it. I'm not going to explain it either. I'm not going to explain it either. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Look, in all seriousness, it's a very, very important role. The county itself, we have some serious issues that we're dealing with. As you mentioned, housing, healthcare, transport, schooling. Everything's under pressure. NHS waiting lists, so on. The list goes on, doesn't it? There's an energy crisis. There's a cost of living crisis that's taking place right across the county as well. And if we look at it from a Peterborough lens itself, local life with when you speak to people who are struggling, people are really on the breadline here.
Well, let's put it this way to you. When we started this show, we were talking about optimism and how we see the year going ahead.
Yeah.
And I said to you, I'm not very optimistic. And what you've just said there is the reason why I'm not very optimistic at the moment, because things are hard out there for people. And that's why I come back to what I said earlier in the show, which is, look, we have to look after ourselves. Yes, the governments and the local councils and the county councils will do what they'll do. But as human beings, we've got to be there for each other like we were during COVID. People were there, they stepped up, they looked out for their neighbours. And in a time of crisis, in a time of need, and I'm not saying that this country is in a place of crisis or this city is, but times are hard, right? So rather than being complacent, rather than saying how bad things are, because we know how bad things are, right? Why don't we try and be optimistic about what we can do as human beings, about being the better neighbour, about being the better person, rather than, showing divide, which is what governments tend to do and parties tend to do, which is show differences and divides in people. Let's go beyond that, right? Let's be the better people, because I've seen that in politics, and I'm trying to say to people, look, let's go back to humanity. Let's go back to the basics of just looking out for each other, looking out for your elderly neighbour, because I tell you what builds bridges better than anything else. That's taking care of each other. And if you want to build bridges, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, whatever faith you are, non-faith, the best way to bring people together is by showing that you are prepared to help each other, lend a hand, helping hand, whether it's giving more in charity, whether it's making sure your neighbour's warm tomorrow night, making sure that they've got a hot meal. Because a lot of people, we're still very proud people. Being British also means being very proud, right, and not showing when you're on a downward spiral. We're scared to ask for help. Not probably scared, we're probably too proud sometimes to ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with humbling yourself and asking for help when you need it and giving people the opportunity to help you. So again, I would plead and request all our listeners to do the right thing. Just knock on your neighbour's door. If you've got an elderly neighbour, just make sure they're warm over the next few days when it's cold.
Beautifully said there, Ishfaq. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Absolutely. Just one final point on this then. This election isn't just about Cambridgeshire. It's a bellwether for broader trends in local governance across the UK. How these candidates navigate issues like sustainability, housing and education could set the tone for our regions. And thanks for that, Ishfaq. Really appreciate your insight into the whole mayorship and what it means as well. Really appreciate it. But that's it. It's a wrap for this week episode of Let's Talk. We've explored reasons for optimism in 2025, examined the UK standing in Europe, and analysed the high stakes Cambridgeshire Mayor for the mayor election. Thank you for joining us, and do remember what Ishfaq said this evening. Very, very important. But remember, your voice matters. So whether it's the comment section or the ballot box, make it heard. Next week, we're going to dive into some more news stories of the week. I'll be joined by Dr. Shabina. But in the meantime, do take care of yourselves, your neighbours, and your community.